Okay, today's Sprint 79 review, and let's just get started. I don't have pretty words like Oleg does. Oleg usually does a sprint statistics. I'll walk through those.
Do your impersonation.
I will. I'll try with my Russian accent. Carol's going to give the community update. Harpreet's going to do the UI. Dan Berger on providers. Tina Fitzgerald on automate. Gregg Tanzillo on platform. Alberto Bellotti on REST API. And Chris Arcand on GraphQL. Thank you. API. And Chris Budzilowicz on documentation and discussion. All right. So there were 304 merged PRs across 87 repos. That's, we'll see in the next slides, much lower than in the past, but we are trying to close down, and so the merges are to be expected to be low like that. So let's move on. And there you go. It's the big drop off, but again, we're trying to lock in the end of sprint.
The chart looks worse because of the scale.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
It really is.
I've tried to tweak it a couple times, but it just doesn't help. So there you go. Yep. So, okay, and this is the types of PRs across the repos, and you can see we have almost half is bugs, and as Oleg says, it's to be expected, and just a smattering of the others, as he says.
Decent amount of enhancements.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And because we had that low number of PRs, there really wasn't much of change in the repository health report, and you can see that. Really, the classic UI was the only biggest difference, but even that is a small number compared to the number of other issues. So, very minimal changes. Okay, over to Carol.
Thank you, John. I almost say thanks, Oleg, out of habit. So this couple of weeks we've had quite a lot of blog posts, which is really great. So thanks to all that contributed. So to start off, we have as you know that we are going through now the monthly updates for ManageIQ rather than weekly, and Drew Ullman gave us the first mass launch post. Really hard to pronounce, but please read it. There's two special traits in this post. One quite obvious, and the other maybe not so much. So I recommend reading it out loud for maximum enjoyment. Then after that, we have a few posts, rather long ones, which I would not recommend reading out loud unless you're well prepared with maybe a large glass of water or something near you. So we have Joe Vucek with two posts on ManageIQ authentication. The first one giving an overview of how the authentication can be configured and the steps involved in the configuration. The second one is more on how to troubleshoot the supporting technologies for ManageIQ authentication. Very interesting posts. Please take a look if you haven't already. And this one, which is just merged this morning, so it's our Valentine's Day post by Nick Lemuro. It's about this epic journey of discovering and solving this memory leak in Ruby through working on ManageIQ. So in any case, being a Valentine's Day post, I would suggest a glass of red wine to go with this Ruby post. I'm giving like drink recommendations or something. So, but lastly, the Gaprindashvili GA post that was pushed a bit too late last time to have the URL included in the sprint review. Anyway, it's now available. You can get the links there. And what's also available are these T-shirts that you can see. The graphics. This is a mock-up only. The T-shirts should look a lot better. They are the nice quality T-shirts that most of you, I think, like. So I'll be sharing more information about how to get them and, getting the sizing and stuff like that. So please hold on for that. I will try to get information out to as many people as possible. And if you don't hear from me by, the next 2 weeks, by the next sprint, you can contact me directly as well to if you want the T-shirt. So, all right. I think that's all from me. Thanks. And next slide, please.
Hi all. So on the UI side, we didn't have any major enhancements, mostly bug fixes. As you can see the count up there, 60 bugs fixed and I'm sorry, total 60 PRs, and out of that, there were 39 bugs fixed and 6 enhancements, 4 refactorings. As of some of the major bugs that were fixed, I have a list of those here. Some fixes were made to show default values selected on the sample dialog screen. I think values for the radio buttons were completely incorrect, so fix was made in that area. And also there was a support added to in SUI for multi-select dialog drop-down fields.
Was going to buy the pieces online to make them the color of my Jeep. Now I'm just going to spray paint it and things like that.
And a bug was fixed in the VM Explorer to make the VM console button enabled if the host's version is 6.0 or higher. And there were several fixes made to the tagging screens in data stores and services explorer, as well as in the instances and networks area. And finally, there were some changes made to network-related CIs to remove edit and delete buttons from the list views. These are available only on the summary screen for now, based upon the type of record. And I think those buttons will be added back later as we add the backend support to figure out whether the task is supported for the selected record in the list or not. So I think that's all we have for the UI for this sprint. Next slide, please.
This is Dan. I'll be taking over for Brona today, and I'll be talking about the providers a bit. Next slide, please. So we had over 50 merged PRs across providers, with OpenStack getting the lion's share, followed by KubeVirt and Kubernetes, and the rest divided among the others. Next slide, please. On Amazon, we had a couple things I wanted to mention. First thing was that memory collection was missing from CAP&U, and that was fixed. So now we have memory average and swap average. And I think this was Alexander's first PR for us, so thank you. There was also an issue around SSH, which Amazon uses to connect to agent and Docker. And so now we have improved error handling and cleanup logic that was added so that it removes the agent properly and prevents zombies, which are never good. Next slide. For Nuage, a couple issues I wanted to mention. One is falls into the small but important category, which is Nuage now has its own log file, which is always good for debugging and helps developers as well as the support folks. A little heavier was a fix for AMQP. What was happening was if an endpoint was updated, the event catcher was not being updated, and you had to kill the event catcher, thread manually, and restart it, pick up the changes, so now you don't have to do that anymore. And that's it. Next slide. And I'll turn it over to Adam.
All right, thanks, Dan. So OpenStack had a lot of fixes this sprint. Some of the biggest ones were they fixed the tenant project parameter being passed to Keystone, and they fixed duplicated records that were returned from Fog OpenStack, which caused some really strange issues where if inventory was returned in 2 pages, it's possible that the same VM could be returned twice. And so we were actually saving that VM both times and disconnecting the first. They also enhanced the user role by using provider custom attributes and a lot of refactoring around provider discovery code to remove provider-specific bits out of the core module and move them to the provider repositories. And for VMware, we fixed an issue where events would never be connected to VMs once they were disconnected because we were using EMSID, EMSREF. So now we always do the lookup for VMs by using its UUID when connecting to events. And that's it. Over to Tina for Automate.
Yes, good morning. 19 PRs merge this sprint. I'm super excited about a new consolidated email class that Bill Fitzgerald created. It's a single location for all emails, is located in a new system notification namespace. And it enables users to simply create an instance to generate a new email, as opposed to having to write an automate method. It supports existing email methods. There are a few examples where the methods should still be used based on the complexity of the email content. We have 10% of our existing emails fall into this category. Next slide, please. In this example instance, the subject and body attributes specify the email content. The to attribute is a null coalescing operator, which is really powerful because it lets you specify the recipient based on multiple possibilities based on what's available. Here, it's the owner or requester email, but it could include any number of additional values. The pre-one and customized method entries allow for customization. The sendMail method calls a built-in send email method, and the CC and BCC attributes are for future use. Next slide, please. Bill, we added the V2V transformation mapping and transformation mapping item models and tests. Bill and Lucy worked on the V2V automate content changes with the addition of the transformation top-level namespace, which includes the structure for the state machine and transformation host work in progress, basic auto approval, and placeholder emails using a new consolidated email class. Next slide, please. Fabian has a WIP PR that contains the code required to transform virtual machines. To see more about the ongoing V2V work, check out these repos filtering on the transformation label. And finally, reference to the V2V automate design document. Next slide, and over to Gregg.
All right, thanks, Tina. So we had 24 PRs merged on the platform side. We actually did get some enhancements this go around, but mostly bug fixes. As the trend that follows the trend from everybody else. So big shout out to Joe V for putting together the troubleshooting authentication blog post. So it's a pretty comprehensive guide for troubleshooting of all the different supported external authentication types, and it's something that I think a lot of us find intimidating. So that's going to be really helpful. And also, Joe fixed a couple bugs on his MIQ LDAP to SSSD conversion tool. Those are listed there. And Jillian started doing some work on moving the Postgres database maintenance into the application so that it would run through the regular scheduler, not in a cron job. So she moved the reindexing work. She's working on doing the other piece, the vacuuming. And Libor removed the chargeback rate from metering reports since it never belonged there, but we kind of built the metering reports off of chargeback, so it kind of followed along. So that's cleaned up. And Yuri did some work on the replication subscription page. There was an issue where if one of the remote region was not online, you couldn't load the page at all, which meant you couldn't fix it either, and you couldn't edit the subscription or any other subscription. And he added the status of replication to that screen so that you could see if it's up or down. And that's it on the platform side. I'll turn it over to Alberto.
All right, thanks, Gregg. So last sprint, we had a couple of bug fixes that were needed for the G release. So they went into master, then backported. So the first one by Tim, we needed to make sure that the options specified for request tasks when updating them were symbolized. So that went in. Next, we were missing incorrectly logging a warning for service dialog. So Jillian fixed that. And the third one by Libor, we weren't providing the right roles for block storage manager when accessing the API provider. So that was fixed by Libor. Okay, and the next thing, we started to work on the V2V support. So we had initial design work, and Jillian worked on a couple of web PRs, one to create and get the transformation mappings, and as well as ORing the V2V stuff via service templates. So great work there. Also a lot of help from Bill Way. Thanks, Bill. So we're moving along quite well. That's it for the rest. Off to Chris Arcand on GraphQL.
Thanks, Alberto. So on the GraphQL side of things, we got a lot of stuff done, but the main thing that we worked on was adhering to the relay specification. So relay, again, is a specification for GraphQL servers to adhere to for relay clients to do some really neat things on their side. like pagination and caching and whatnot. So that's 3 parts to the specification. The first is like global object identification. So there's now a way that you can request any specific single node in the entire graph each time indefinitely. So that's really required for relay caching on their end, on the client side. There's also cursor connections. So this is basically synonymous with pagination in REST land. So with cursors, you now can select slices of the graph to be able to paginate through them without requesting, an infinite number of nodes in one particular request. And the last bit is input object mutations. So Relay has a specific way that it wants to accept any sort of mutation in its own type and the payload returned. So with all these things in, any client should be able to know exactly how the GraphQL API should behave with all of these really important conventions. And we finally got all that work done. And that was the main thing that we did. So that is it. Off to Chris.
Hi, for documentation in this sprint, we had 27 PRs merged, all of which were enhancements. The highlights from this sprint are we've added a section on power operations on VMs. We've added a procedure to create service dialog from a container template. We've added some customer requested updates to the appliance hardening guide, some access restriction for UI names and details. We've added an overview on playbooks and info on roles for Cloud Forms. Added a section on service linking via the add provider VMs method. We've added a section on using the ManageIQ automate role, which is spelled incorrectly there. And we've updated the insights document section to match the new UI enhancements. That's all. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, so that wraps up Sprint 79. The next sprint review will be February 28th, last day of the month. Same time, same place. So thank you very much.
그거